This is a Sandler Training audiobook produced and distributed by Gildan Media in partnership with Sandler Training. The Contrarian Salesperson, a parable for non-traditional selling by Jody Williamson. Read by Sean Pratt. We hope you enjoy this program. Forward. In The Contrarian Salesperson, Jody Williamson offers the first, an easy-to-read, lightning-fast, fictionalized business parable based on the core principles of the Sandler selling system methodology. When Jody first proposed this idea to me, I was intrigued and curious about what it might actually look like in print. No Sandler author had attempted anything like this as a book project. After 2 years of work, the final product is finally ready for prime time, and we couldn't be happier. In the pages that follow, you'll find a timeless story that brings to life, in a compelling way, 8 of the most important Sandler principles. It's a major contribution to the growing genre of success fiction, and an exciting new point of entry to the selling system developed by our company's founder, David Sandler. I think Jody should be proud of the result. I certainly am. David H. Mattson, President and CEO, Sandler Training. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. Mark Twain. Prologue. The Memo. Even before he caught sight of tiny-eyed, red-haired Paula Procedure from HR waiting for him in the conference room, Alan sensed this was not going to be a good meeting. Paula clutched the special black clipboard she only used during discussions about employee termination. Like a hungry vulture, Pamela leaned her small red head forward and scanned her familiar territory, sizing up the corpse that didn't yet know it was a corpse. She stared at Alan with a smug, patient expression on her face, as though she had all the time in the world. It was official. The next half hour now had crash and burn written all over it. There was no use pretending otherwise. The memo Alan had gotten that morning from his boss, Harvey Hardnose, had been proof enough of that. It read, "To Alan Atleaster, from Harvey Hardnose, regarding your sales production. Meet me at 9:30 a.m. sharp in conference room A, Harvey." Alan, a salesperson for Acme Corporation who prided himself on his ability to talk his way out of anything, and who was a former Rookie of the Year, was now enduring the worst stretch of bad luck of his 4-year career. This was saying something. After his stellar first season, Alan had no shortage of bad luck. Alan hadn't hit his sales quota for 6 consecutive quarters. He had come close to quota a couple of times over the past year and a half, which he felt should have counted for something, but he had still been put on a 30-day probation. Then, he had lost his biggest account. None of that, he had been prepared to explain to Harvey, was really his fault. Here is what Alan had been all ready to say to his boss before he stepped into that conference room. "Harvey, you know and I know that the economy as a whole has been wildly unpredictable, and our industry has suffered a severe setback due to turbulence in some key industries. All of that was in the Wall Street Journal. I'm not making that up. It's a fact. Not only that, but budgets are tight right now. Everyone is cutting back and making price the issue, not just for us, but for everybody trying to sell in this space. You know that too. What's more, everyone goes through a slump now and then. I'm not alone. So, what we're looking at now is a transitional period. Anyway, the whole industry is down and the market is bad. But that will change eventually. We all know the competition is undercutting us right now. If the competition weren't so brutal, I would have hit quota in 2 or maybe 3 of those quarters. Let's not forget my territory. It is legendary for being hard to sell. As for the leads, they're garbage, and you and I both know that's true. If I had better leads, Harvey, I'd be back on top in no time. Let's face it. What we sell has become completely commoditized. The occasional bad quarter is inevitable because this game is all about price now, and there really isn't anything either of us can do about that." That was the speech he planned to give. It was a good one. Of course, Harvey would have a speech of his own, and Alan would be obliged to listen to it. Alan had imagined that Harvey had scheduled this meeting to scare some sense into him. Alan didn't have any illusions about this being a pleasant discussion, but he had figured it would be over soon, once he had given his own little speech, and he would get back to calling the people on his hot list. He knew the names on this list well because he called them often. Contrary to what Harvey might imagine, Alan really was eager to get to work. So he was interested in getting this meeting started, giving his speech, nodding his head as many times as necessary to get through whatever Harvey had to say, and moving on. In short, Alan was interested in doing what he did best, talking his way out of trouble. Then he saw Paula. Paula's sober gaze seemed to send him a silent message. There will be no talking your way out of this one. A rumor of long standing within the Acme sales department had it that Paula Procedure took a special delight in firing salespeople. A recent rumor, equally popular, held that she had, over the decades, fired a total of 99 salespeople. Supposedly, she kept a running tally on a sheet posted on her wall. Paula Procedure needed to fire one more salesperson before she retired, the rumor went, in order to meet her personal goal of 100. Whether this was true or not, Alan had no way of knowing. He did not know that the sales team had bestowed on her a special nickname, one never repeated in her presence: the Angel of Death. Paula lived to facilitate firing discussions. Her only possible function at meetings such as these was to advise you that you were about to be terminated and then to move the termination paperwork forward through the proper channels. Was it even possible that Alan had reached such a dangerous point without realizing it? Wasn't there supposed to be some kind of warning system? "Hi, Paula," Alan said, taking a seat. "Do you know what this is all about?" Paula grimaced, apparently intending this expression to pass as a smile. Then she looked away. She said nothing. There was an increasingly uneasy silence. Alan pondered the tops of his shoes. Paula checked messages on her phone. The moment seemed to last forever. Finally, Paula looked up and said, "Harvey just texted me. He's running late. He wants me to tell you that we both need to stay here until he shows up." She grimaced again, then looked away. The Angel of Death was biding her time. It looked to Alan as though she were tracing the figure 100 in very large numbers over and over again on her legal pad. Whenever she caught Alan trying to sneak a peek, though, she changed the angle of the pad. Alan waited. His stomach churned. "Consider this your official termination," Harvey Hardnose said, striding into the room and handing Alan a sheet of paper bearing much tiny print. "Paula has been copied on this. She is serving as a witness to our discussion. As of today, you are terminated from the employ of Acme for cause, specifically for failure to perform up to the standards outlined in your employment agreement." And he left the terrible sentence hanging. Harvey took a seat. He stared Alan down with eyes of steel. Alan felt his heart racing. A deep emptiness settled over the conference room. "Unless," Harvey said. "Unless what?" Alan said, after choking back a little gasp. "Unless you agree to sign a revised job description requiring you to spend the next 8 weekends, at a minimum, with your new coach, Carl Contrario." Carl who? Alan stammered. "What kind of name is Contrario?" "Never mind that," Harvey snapped. "Carl is a friend of mine from college. We were hired here at Acme at about the same time. He set every Acme sales record before he left to start his own company. He works as a consultant these days. All you need to know right now, Alan, is that Carl Contrario is the only thing standing between you and a pink slip. Now, let's be honest with one another. I've been patient for the past year and a half, and I do like you a lot. You remind me of me at your age. You talk a good game, but I'm afraid I've run out of patience. No stories, no excuses, no promises, no double talk. Don't even try it, Alan. You'll regret it if you do. Alan started to speak, but Harvey held up his hand, which stopped him. There was silence. Harvey opened a manila folder and extracted a second sheet of paper bearing much small text. He passed the sheet to Alan. It had a blank line at the bottom, awaiting Alan's signature. Here's what we're looking at. You either report to Carl Contrario at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning and convince him that you're coachable, or I let you go. It's up to you, Alan. Tomorrow morning? Saturday? That's my golf day. I have my regular tea time tomorrow at 8 o'clock. The expression on Harvey's face made Alan wish he'd kept this observation to himself. Alan noticed Paula, smiling, as though she had somehow expected him to say something dumb at this moment. Are you interested or not, Alan? Harvey waved a gold-plated pen at him to sign. Alan thought for a moment, took a deep breath, accepted the pen, gold-plated and all, and talked his way out of trouble with a single well-chosen word. Yes. Are you sure? I don't want you to do this unless you are totally committed. Yes, I'm sure. After signing the sheet and returning it and the pen to Harvey, Alan Atleaster looked up and saw Paula Procedure's brows knit in disappointment. The angel of death must have been hoping for number 100 today, Alan thought. But she isn't going to get it. Not just yet. Rule number 1. Zig when others zag. Murray, the cab driver, scowled a little when Alan read out the address Harvey had scrawled on a slip of Acme notepaper. When Alan repeated himself, the cabbie shook his head, punched the number into the GPS, and started driving. Alan didn't like taxis, and these days he didn't like spending money on cab fare. He could barely afford his golf game. But his wife Kathy needed their only car on weekends to run errands. Rural neighborhood, the cab driver said. He muttered something unintelligible as he guided the yellow-crowned Victoria onto the freeway on-ramp leading out of town. What Alan had expected to see was a shiny modern office building, yet when they finally arrived at their destination, 10 minutes before Alan's appointed starting time, the spot didn't look at all like what Alan was expecting. This was no office building. The place where the cab stopped didn't look like the lavish, comfortable home of a successful salesperson either, which was the second thing Alan had expected. After that long ride, which had culminated in a bumpy, bone-jarringly unpaved road lined with tall trees, the place where they finally stopped was a small, dilapidated trailer. This trailer had been left, for reasons only it knew, in a small clearing in the middle of a dense stretch of woods, serviced by one uncertain road. A mailbox, suspended uneasily upon a 2x4 someone had jammed into the soil, proclaimed in white paint the same address written on that slip of Acme stationery. This was a weather-beaten, distinctly lonely-looking trailer. It had been out on its own for a long time, and it had seen better days. Alan thought to himself, I missed my tea time for this? You sure this is where you're supposed to have your meeting? Murray asked. Murray was gruff and bearded, and his tone of voice suggested that he was wary of the surroundings. The place didn't look all that inviting to Alan either. 3 scruffy crows landed on the roof of the little trailer. They glared at Alan. Should he stay, or should he go? Alan pulled out his phone and dialed Harvey's home number. What is it, Alan? Said Harvey, groggy, but apparently still able to make out the caller ID readout. I was hoping to sleep in today. Sorry, Alan said. It's just that I think I must have written down the wrong address. The place the cab driver took me to is, a ratty-looking old trailer? Alan was speechless. Yep, Harvey said. That's his office. Trust me, where he actually lives is much, much nicer. I guess I should have expected your call. Carl Contrario does all of his consulting in that little trailer. It's part of the training. Oh, wait. What time is it? 7:53 a.m. Okay, good. You're not late yet. Whatever you do, Alan, pay the cab driver and go knock on that door before it's 8 o'clock. You do not want to be late with this guy. Good luck. And Harvey hung up. Obediently, Alan paid his fare and stepped out of the cab. It pulled away in a yellow blur, picked up speed, and disappeared. Alone on the dirt road, Alan stared at the little trailer, then checked his watch. 7:55 a.m. Quickly, he made his way to the door and knocked 3 times. "Come in," said a man's voice within. He sounded relaxed. Alan opened the flimsy-looking door. To Alan's surprise, the interior of the trailer was, or at least appeared, sturdy, spacious, luxurious, tastefully lit, and quite well appointed. Some kind of optical illusion must have made the room look like that. 6 important pieces of pop art, seemingly genuine, although that hardly seemed possible, lined the walls. Alan thought he recognized on the furthest wall an Andy Warhol painting he had studied in his college art history class. The title of the painting? $. Beneath that spectacular image, behind a sleek mahogany desk, sat a thin man with a thin face in a dark business suit. Middle-aged, with immaculately coiffed salt-and-pepper hair. He wore round John Lennon glasses and a white tie. "Congratulations, Alan," the man said, gesturing toward a plush, leather-upholstered armchair positioned directly in front of his desk. "You've made it past the first level. Most people walk away before they've even said a word to me. You didn't make that mistake. But I suspect you called your boss to confirm you were in the right place. Didn't you, The clear eyes behind those Lennon specs stared at Alan without blinking. Alan took a seat, then nodded. "No matter," the man said. "You're here. Once you knock on the door and step in here before 8, all is well. But if you'd been late, this would not have gone well at all. You'd have failed before we even spoke a word to each other. And you'd have lost your job for failing to be coachable. By the way, one of the first things you will learn here is that the very best salespeople are the most coachable ones. They're coachable because they're always growing." He laughed abruptly, stopped laughing just as abruptly, stood, reached over the table, grabbed Alan's hand, and shook it vigorously. "I'm Carl Contrario, Alan. Glad to meet you. You are coachable, aren't you?" "I hope so." Carl released Alan's hand and resumed his seat behind the desk. "Can I ask you a question, Carl?" "Sure." Carl beamed. Behind the round lenses, his eyes radiated with what appeared to be genuine joy at having begun in earnest. "Sure, ask away. Ask as many questions as you like. I love questions." He seemed to mean it. "Well," Alan said, "I'm not sure how to put this, but there's something about this room that feels odd to me. Maybe it's my imagination. Is this place bigger on the inside than on the outside?" "Oh, it's not." "Not really," Carl said. "It couldn't be, could it? Don't worry about that, Alan." Carl Contrario winked. "I happen to have a good interior decorator," Carl continued. "She's marvelous. I think she must have meant for me to use the interior space here as some kind of metaphor." "What metaphor would that be?" "You tell me." There was silence. Alan thought for a moment. Then he said, "More than meets the eye?" Carl clapped his hands. "Marvelous!" he shouted. "Marvelous! Harvey finally sent me a bright one. Someone who can actually think on his feet. Yes, indeed, Alan. There is more to you than meets the eye. Well done." Alan, who couldn't remember saying anything about himself, took a deep breath. Things were getting stranger by the minute. Fortunately, that deep breath calmed him down. Alan looked at Carl, who was once again smiling without a word for no apparent reason, and then he looked around the room, taking in all the rich details. His eye kept returning to that Andy Warhol painting, $. "Can I ask another question?" Alan said. "Sure." Behind the steel-rimmed circles of glass, Carl's blue eyes looked like a happy child's. "You bet." "It's obvious you could afford a real office if you wanted to. Why the heck do you work in a trailer?" To keep people like you on your toes, Carl said. To be unlike what you expect. Be honest. When your cab pulled up, you took one look at my little trailer, and you thought you were in the wrong place. In fact, you were certain you were in the wrong place. Why? Because you'd never, ever expect a sales mentor who is any good to deliver personal sales coaching in a dingy little broken-down trailer. Am I right? Right, Alan agreed. Is that what we're doing now? Personal sales coaching? Carl nodded, excited, and flashed another big grin. Yep, that's what we're doing. In an environment you didn't expect. Truly effective selling is all about not doing what's expected. Now, before we get started, Alan, I want to set some ground rules that will help us work together. Sure. What are they? If we're going to accomplish anything worthwhile, it's important that you be totally committed to making changes and to taking my coaching. That's why I'm here. Yes, but everyone says they're committed, right up until the moment I ask them to change their habits. I guess I want to make sure you're prepared to make some big changes. Alan nodded. Yes, I am. Another thing, we're going to have a series of coaching sessions. I need to make sure you're agreeing to show up for all of them. Said Alan, pondering his weekly 8 a.m. tea time once again. I thought maybe we'd meet a couple of times, get a whole lot done, and then, find a way to cover everything in a few weeks. Carl shook his head slowly. I can tell already, he said, that we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Well, said Alan, can't blame a guy for trying. I'll be here. I'm ready to get to work. Are you sure you're okay with all of this? Because if you're not, that's fine. We don't have to do this. I'm sure. I definitely want to do this. I'm ready to roll. Let's get started then. There are 8 big principles I'm going to be sharing with you during our meetings. I call them Contrarian Selling Rules. Contrarian? Asked Alan. What do you mean by that? Carl handed Alan a card, which Alan, eager to show how coachable he was, read out loud. Zig when other people zag. The first contrarian selling rule, Carl said, is zig when other people zag. Tell me, Alan, why does a contrarian salesperson zig? Alan only had to think for the briefest instant. Because everyone else is zagging. Are you asking me or telling me? Telling you. They zig because everyone else is zagging. Yes, Carl shouted, pumping both fists in the air. You're going to get this rule down in record time, Alan. I just know it. By the way, that's how Warren Buffett became a billionaire. Zigging when everyone else was zagging. Warren Buffett figured out something important, something all contrarian salespeople know. The fact that a belief or practice is popular or repeated frequently does not make it true, valid, or useful. You have to be willing to look at things differently. Think about what happens when a salesperson calls someone new on the phone to pressure that person to set up a meeting. The moment the prospect senses that pressure and realizes that a salesperson is on the phone, what does he do? He goes on the defensive. He shuts down. He withholds information. That pattern establishes itself predictably. If we're not going to fall into that pattern, we need to do something different than what the prospect expects. We are contrarians, Alan. We are all about doing the opposite of what other salespeople do. Now, why do you think that is? Because if you act like every other salesperson, you're going to be treated like every other salesperson? Marvelous. We don't deserve to be treated that way, do we? No, Alan said. We don't. Glad to hear it. Carl pulled out, from the top drawer of his desk, a pad of paper and a ballpoint pen. He held them up for Alan's examination. To get our heads around the first rule, Carl announced, we're going to start a game called Word Association. You'll be using these 2 simple tools to play. There have been a lot of game shows built on this over the years. You've probably seen some of those shows on TV. The host reads a certain word aloud, and the contestants say the first word that comes into their head. You know how that kind of game works, Alan? Sure. All right, Carl said, handing over the pad and the pen to Alan. But this version of word association has a twist. When I say the word, I want you to write down only what parents, relatives, prospects, and other authority figures, including TV producers and movie makers, had to say about this word while you were growing up. Ready? Alan clicked the ballpoint pen and positioned it over the paper. Ready, he said. The word, said Carl, is salesperson. You have 2 minutes. Start writing. Eager to fulfill his coach's instruction, Carl set pen to paper and began jotting down words. They came much easier than he imagined they would. At the end of the allotted time, he had written down a lot. Read to me what you've got, Carl said. So that's what Alan did. Here's what his sheet said. Fast-talking, slimy, sleazy, dishonest, liar, insincere, snake oil, shady, slick, phony, two-faced, tricky, fake, self-serving, manipulative, misleading, shifty, slippery, out to make a quick buck, and, scumbag. Carl looked at Alan, smiled, and said, with a reputation like that waiting for us before we even sell anything, do you ever stop and wonder why we went into this line of work? Alan smiled too, but he said nothing. Believe it or not, those are pretty typical responses, Carl said. There's a reason they're out there. Salespeople perpetuate those stereotypes. They've been doing it for years. Many don't level with people. They are perceived as untrustworthy, as emotional fakes. But that's not how I see myself. Is that how you want everyone to see you? No, said Alan, without hesitation, and it wasn't either. Good, Carl said. Now the question is, what are you supposed to do when you deal with prospects or customers who do see you that way? We have to assume they got the same programming you did when you were growing up. How are you going to handle them, Alan? I have absolutely no idea. You agree they do have preconceptions about you before you even reach out to them? Sure, Alan said. You can tell when people you meet are on their guard. You can tell when they don't want to be pushed around by a salesperson, and I don't blame them. I don't want to be treated that way either when I go shopping for something. Well put. So what's the answer? Don't act like a typical salesperson, Carl said. Ever. That's the ultimate expression of rule number 1. If you notice the competition doing something, I want you to stop doing it, right away. If you notice yourself sounding or acting like a typical salesperson, I want you to do something else. Wow, Alan frowned. This sounded suspiciously like unlearning everything he'd ever picked up about how to sell. Do I have to do that? Yep, Carl said. It's the price of admission. If you see everybody else is zagging, you're going to have to learn to start zigging. If there's something you're comfortable doing but it's not working because everyone else in the marketplace is doing it, you're going to have to walk away from it. If you're not willing to commit to that much, we don't have a lot to talk about. That's why you're here today, Alan. To promise me you'll walk away from a habit when I say it's time to walk away, no matter how familiar that habit may feel to you. Carl raised his eyebrows expectantly. This was apparently the moment of truth. Alan took a deep breath. Okay, Alan said. When you say it's time to walk away, I'll walk away. Now, then, here's the biggest question of the day. Are you sure you want to become a contrarian salesperson? There's still time to back out. It's okay to say this isn't what you want to do. I don't want to put any pressure on you. I'm okay if we're done. I take rejection well. Are you positive you're ready for this? Yes, Alan said quickly, imagining that Carl would call Harvey and report some serious uncoachability if he said anything else. Marvelous, Carl said. Marvelous. Everything in Carl's world apparently was marvelous. Now that you're a contrarian...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?